Well, it's Thursday night, and the action on the court is heating up. Welcome to another chase for the championship. We might be in the middle of the non-conference schedule right now, but, man, there's still plenty of big games to talk about. Let's dive right in, shall we? Our game of the week this week, Georgia Tech headed down the road to Athens for a showdown with their in-state rivals from the SEC, the Georgia Bulldogs. I love those games because clean, old-fashioned hate is the best nickname, and WJBF's Brendan Robertson was there covering the Jackets. Brendan, Tech came up just a little short in this one. What were some of the keys to that game?
Well, free throws down the stretch, really, the Jackets were terrible from the free throw line all night, and both teams really got off to a slow start, but the Jackets, defense is their focus, and they got some great production, career highs from two of their guys, and Michael DeVoe, his first career double-double, and then got another one from Moses Wright as well that sort of picked this team up late. But I think we're dealing with a growing monster in Athens in the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, and he was overshadowed last night by Rayshawn Hammonds, who had a career night for the Dogs, and ultimately on the road in a game that was moved up in the schedule compared to where it's been in previous years, because now they actually had students at this game. Usually they play it, the students are on break. Right. It's kind of flat. And I think the Dogs just sort of rode some home momentum, and Georgia Tech just could close that gap.
Yeah, that place gets rocking, man. Stegman gets loud. Tech down by 8 at half, and then got down by as many as 16 in the second. But they did manage to make a comeback and make it tight at the end. What were they doing? What were they talking about to get those guys to play that much better by the end of this thing?
Well, it goes back to sort of what I mentioned earlier, Moses Wright and Michael DeVoe. DeVoe had 20 of his 34 points in the second half, and Moses Wright turned in a season-high 18 points for him. Great to see him come along. I know Josh Pastner's thrilled with that, and you're right, Tech was down by 16 more than once in this game. So showing some good fight to get back in it, but just not enough firepower, not enough gel. Jose Alvarado was playing at about probably 50% last night. He was in a walking boot a couple days before this game, and he's really the engine that makes their offense go. So they had to rely on Bubba Parham, who was new to that role. Josh Pastner admitted as much, that it took a little while for the guys to get used to that change, as opposed to Alvarado, who usually is the distributor and makes that offense work.
Got a little out of sequence here. I just want to back it up to the first half just to say it took nearly 3 minutes for anyone to score. Is that just nerves or good defense, or are they just that loud at Stegman now? It's been a while since I've been out there.
Well, you'd think it would have been the student section that started slow, because the first 1,200 got free Bojangles. It puts you in that food coma.
That's an incentive.
Right. No free ads, by the way, for Bojangles. Send it my way. No. But this is Georgia Tech's first game in about 9 days. And, maybe that's keyed up to the slow start. Georgia Tech, we know, prides themselves on the defense. That's where Josh Pastner wants this team to sort of make their claim as to their identity. So he's probably okay with slow starts as long as it's both teams. And as for Georgia, I think Anthony Edwards is just a little off, right, and he usually gets that offense going, even though he's only been in there, for 3 games in the regular season. But maybe we'll chalk it up to the Bojangles.
Definitely. Everybody gets a little sluggish after bow time. I mean, I don't know. I'm right, guilty of it. I'll claim that one. Tech faces another SEC opponent next week when Arkansas heads to Atlanta. What are we going to look for in that one?
Arkansas has been great under Eric Musselman. Off to a hot start in their first few games, and they're sort of built in a similar mold. They want to pride themselves on defense. Georgia Tech went on the road, beat Arkansas last year, so they know they can get it done, and they'll have the advantage of playing on the flats next week. But it's another great non-conference test early in the season for Josh Pastner's ball club, and they've got to sort of take these wins and maybe make them almost mini bowl games with that postseason ban. They've appealed, but they've got to sort of stake their claim and win big games on the road. They hung their hat, that overtime winner, season opener against NC State. That's a great win for this team. So they need to look at these non-conference opponents that are really a challenge, as well as their conference games, to just sort of stake their season on that, because at this point, no postseason to look for the Yellow Jackets.
Oh, they definitely got some momentum building down there in Atlanta. Looking forward to them building something big. WJBF's Brendan Robertson, thanks for hanging out with us, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you again soon.
Well, Duke is up to number 1 in the polls with that 4-0 record. The Blue Devils rolling along. Now, it wasn't a blowout, but Duke handled Georgia State at home last Friday, beating the Panthers 74-63. Trey Jones played all 40 minutes, led the Blue Devils with 31 points. Freshman center Vernon Carey Jr. had a big one, too, with 20 points and 14 rebounds. When asked about the upsets in college basketball the last few weeks and the close calls, Coach K, he went all Zen master on us.
Nobody is supposed to win or supposed to lose. They're not ordained to win or lose. That's why it's called competition. And people who compete and work hard turn out to be winners. And people who don't turn out to be the team that the winners beat.
It's the nicest way I've ever heard anybody say losers before. Duke now turns their attention back to the Big Apple. Tip-off for the Blue Devils against Cal, the Empire Classic. It's a little less than 2 hours away. That one's at Madison Square Garden. Then tomorrow, the Blue Devils will take on either Georgetown or Texas at MSG. Once they're done in New York, Duke's head back to Cameron Indoor to face Stephen F. Austin next Tuesday at 9. And hot on Duke's heels in the polls, the Louisville Cardinals, they're up to number 2. WEHT's Randall Parmley is taking a look at the Cardinals' force in the latest 2 lopsided wins. Randall?
Well, it was a week of mixed results for the now second-ranked Louisville Cardinals. A pair of home games, both supposed to be easy ones, not so much, at least for a while. The Cards got the week started with an easy 87-58 win against North Carolina Central at the Yum Center. 5 players hit double figures, once again led by Jordan Worrell with 17. Stephen Enoch added 15. The Cards were red hot, shooting nearly 67% for the game. A different story for a while on Wednesday, though, against South Carolina Upstate. Those pesky Spartans gave Louisville a major scare. They had a 3-point lead in the second half before Chris Mack and company pulled away late for a 76-50 win. Another big game for Worrell. 28 points. Ryan McMahon added 15 on 5 triples. So up next for the Cards, the Akron Zips on Sunday, and then Louisville takes on Western Kentucky the day after Thanksgiving. That game in Nashville, by the way. The Hilltoppers were picked to win Conference USA, so that could be Louisville's first real test of the season. Covering the Louisville Cardinals, I'm Randall Parmley.
Thank you so much, Randall. Now, UNC is in the top 5 in the rankings. They are a 4-0 this season, but last night's game against Elon in the Dean Dome was, well, it was the furthest thing from the blowout you'd expected. And it's about to get even more interesting with a trip to the Bahamas on deck. Joining us now is WNCN's Alyssa Ray. Alyssa, what stood out to you in these early Tar Heel victories?
Well, quite frankly, Cole Anthony. He was the number 2 recruit in the country, the number 1 point guard. Through his first 3 games, he averaged more than 27 points. But last night, he was held to just 9. And fellow freshman Armando Bacot carried the weight of this team. He stepped up to help them get the win. Bacot had a double-double, 22 points and 14 rebounds.
I've just been trying to take a little bit of pressure off of Cole because he's been having a lot of stuff like on his shoulders. So I just know that we all got to step up even more just so his role isn't so heavy.
He has a chance to become that pretty much the other scorer on this team. I mean, we've been looking for someone else to put up numbers consistently. That's his second back, as he has back-to-back double-doubles now. I mean, Armando, he's been doing this since high school, and I've known this. And he's finally coming into it now. I'm proud of him.
What areas do you think his team really needs to improve?
Things are about to get a lot more challenging for UNC. They headed down to the Bahamas where they're going to try to win that battle for Atlantis. First up, Alabama. What should we look for in that game there, Alyssa?
Well, as you mentioned, the Heels are 4-0, but the margin of victory hasn't been what you would expect when a Power 5 team like UNC plays the likes of UNCW or Elon. A lot of that reason is that there are a lot of new contributors to this team, a lot of new faces. The real test will be when they face another Power 5 team like Alabama and potentially Michigan, Oregon, or Gonzaga. These are fellow tournament teams, and I think that's where we will see the potential for UNC when they know they're playing a big-time opponent.
Now, win or lose, that bracket is set up that they're going to play 3 games in 3 days. Brutal for anybody. I know that they're college kids, but that's got to take a toll on these guys.
Yeah, of course. Anytime you play 3 games in 3 days, fatigue is a huge factor. They're going to have to go deeper into their bench to keep their guys fresh and not burn them out for just one tournament. But I asked Garrison Brooks last night what they thought about going to the Bahamas, and as you can tell, he's pretty pumped for the trip.
You know, I'm excited to go to the Bahamas. You know, I think that's the biggest thing, get out of this cold. But I think that'll be a good thing to see us go against some good teams and really see how we measure up against them.
There's something in the way that he said cold. I don't know. It just tells me that they're going to spend a lot of time at the beach having some fun out there. Now, it's a loaded field, the tournament. Who should they be most wary of in that field, Alyssa?
Yeah, wish you were going with them, Chris.
No
But, I mean,
kidding,
this is a packed field. Gonzaga is 8, Oregon's ranked 11, and Seton Hall is 13. So we're talking about some of the best teams in the country. And Michigan, out of the Big Ten, is always tough. So while UNC should be the favorite to win, they will definitely get a run for their money.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much, Alyssa. We're going to be talking to you again very soon. I know it.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Now, it wasn't exactly a blowout, but the 7th-ranked Virginia Cavaliers, they took care of business at home with a win over Vermont. WRIC's Natalie Calabat was there for another low-scoring showdown for the Cavs.
The last time the Virginia Cavaliers played a team from the American East Conference, they were handed a historic loss by UMBC. Well, here at John Paul Jones Arena on Tuesday night, things went a little different for the number 7 Cavaliers as they handed Vermont their first loss of the season. And Vermont came out punching the Cavs in the mouth. Steph Smith drains the three-point shot to make it 7-0 Vermont, but the Cavs fight back. Mamadi Diakite from the corner for 3 to break up Vermont's 7-0 run and start a 14-0 Virginia run. Diakite led the Cavaliers with 10 points in the first half as UVA led 24-18 at the break. The game got interesting in the second half, though. Vermont took the lead as Anthony Lamb caught fire with his three-point shot to make it 28-26 Vermont. After the half went back and forth, UVA fires back, took the lead for good on a great assist from Jay Huff to Diakite. Virginia led 50-49 and used a 9-0 run to close out the game. Tony Bennett's team remains unbeaten and surviving 61-55.
I think we showed some grit with enough stops defensively and enough plays offensively. And some guys, stepped up and made enough plays. And again, on both ends, still areas for improvement.
Yeah, I think in the first half we didn't come out ready. Yeah, we had 3 turnovers out of the first 3 possessions or something like that. But yeah, we all just kind of locked in even more and kind of got into the game. And yeah, I think that was a good test for us. But yeah, I think the coaches do a good job of just keeping us poised, and we got a lot of veterans on the team that don't get flustered late game.
Virginia has now won 20 straight non-conference games here at John Paul Jones Arena. Next up for the Cavaliers, they face UMass in the Basketball Hall of Fame tip-off. Covering Virginia, I'm Natalie Calabat.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That Hall of Fame tip-off game against UMass starting on Saturday at noon in Connecticut, and then UVA will face either Arizona State or St. John's. Come back on Sunday. Cavs will then head back home for a showdown with Maine on Wednesday afternoon at 4. Meanwhile, moving on, Florida State was once again in the also receiving votes section of the rankings this week. But as WMBB's Courtney Mims reports, the Seminoles gathering a little mo.
Well, the Florida State Seminoles may have lost their very first game of the season at Pittsburgh, but now the Noles are on a roll. They beat the Chattanooga Mocs 89-53 on Tuesday night, and the Noles had 2 starters out for this game too. Just before tip-off, it was announced that MJ Walker and Raquan Gray would not be playing as they had minor injuries, but that didn't bother the team much. The bench stepped up to the task. They scored 51 of FSU's 89 points, and the younger players stepped up in this one as well. Devin Vassell led the way with 17 points, and Patrick Williams added 16 to that. The Noles now improve to 3-1, winning their first game of the Emerald Coast Classic. The Noles now look ahead to their next home game against St. Francis on Saturday. FSU head coach Leonard Hamilton said that although Walker and Gray don't have serious injuries, he doesn't expect them to play this weekend. Covering Florida State, I'm Courtney Mims.
All right, good stuff there, Courtney. Thank you. Meanwhile, that game against St. Francis is Saturday matinee with a 2 o'clock tip-off, and then it's a quick turnaround to Monday night's game against Chicago State at 7. Moving on here, Virginia Tech is turning a lot of heads with their 5-0 start this year, and they've got at least one huge showdown coming up in the Maui Invitational. Joining us live to break it all down is WFXR's Jermaine Farrell. Jermaine, did anybody see this 5-0 start coming for the Hokies?
Well, I tell you, first of all, Chris, I have to compliment your barber. You are looking sharp. You got a great haircut, sir. So I want to start that off by saying congratulations. You're looking good, sir. You look marvelous, just marvelous. Speaking of looking marvelous, the Virginia Tech Hokies with that 5-0 start. I don't think anyone really saw it coming. The first game, which really started the ball rolling, was getting that win on the road at Clemson, which was a big win to start off ACC play. And then they played some teams really that they should win and should beat. But everybody's talking about Cole Anthony for UNC, one of the great freshmen. Landers Nolley II. I tell you what, Chris, he's been balling, shot calling, scoring on average in the 20s, really helping out. But this Tech team, they lost so much with Justin Robinson as well as Nikhil Anderson, Alexander Walker. But they got Wabisa Beatty doing well. They got Naheem Aline scoring points. So this team has really come together. And I feel that this 5-0 start is well-deserved. But, of course, as you mentioned, the competition is going to get a little tougher over in Hawaii.
Now, moving on here, the Hokies, they set a school record last night, hitting 21 three-pointers in their win over Delaware State. Did they just get lucky? I know sometimes the rim just seems bigger, or is Virginia Tech focusing on those shots behind the arc?
I'll tell you one thing, Chris, not only was that a school record, I looked up today, it was actually an ACC record,
wow.
The 21 three-pointers made in a game. And I tell you, when the ball is falling, it's falling in. If you look at some of the numbers and notes in the ball game, Jalen Cone, he had 5 three-pointers. Isaiah Wilkins, he had 5 three-pointers. And stop me if you heard this before, Naheem Aline, he had 5 three-pointers. So 3 players with 15 triples. So it's like, yes, you know, it looks like an ocean. It looks so big. And when the shots fall, they just fall. But as we hear from Coach Mike Young, he talks about, hey, if the shot's there, take it. But he has another theory on why they are making outside shots, particularly from three-point land.
We better be. Let's be honest. We are who we are. You know, I wish I had 2, you know, big ones down there that I could throw the ball to. We don't get fouled enough. We don't, you know, we don't have the opportunity to throw it down to the block and see how you're going to guard it and play out of that. That's how I'm most comfortable playing. You know, the old live by it, die by it. I've got no choice. It's who we are, and you know, just. Thankfully, you know, have a number of kids that we do handle the ball pretty well. We do pass the ball pretty well, and we have a number of them that can shoot it.
Well, it's a good thing Coach owns up to who he is now. Virginia Tech is getting ready to head out to Hawaii. First of all, you're going out there, right? And second of all, showdown with Michigan State, the Maui Invitational. Can the Hokies pull the upset?
But, Chris, I heard you and I were going to Maui. Is that true? Kind of, sort of?
Is it? We'll double check on that.
There you go. I mean, well, you're going to Bahamas for North Carolina. I'm going to Maui. But actually, I tell you one thing. I mean, the last 4 games, I guess you could call them the JV division. Right. But it looks like this one coming up for Virginia Tech. They are stepping up into the varsity division, facing the 3rd-ranked Michigan State Spartans. Interesting because last year when they were playing in the Sweet 16, they were in that same pod up in D.C. Potentially those teams could have met. In fact, I remember seeing Michigan State. They were in the Final Four as well when we were up in Minneapolis covering the Final Four there. But I tell you one thing, it is going to be a tall task. They are going to have a little fun. Coach Young says they're going to have a little fun. But at the end of the day, they will definitely find out what they're all about as they take on Michigan State. And here's what Coach Young had to say about this big challenge coming up on Monday.
I know this. We've got 4 days to prepare. We go out there with a good basketball team, and we're going to improve. It'll be a far different scout and a far different prep than what we've been accustomed to. They're unlike anything that we've played to this point. But you know, the time has come. The time has come to play. You know, somebody really, really good, and it will test everything that we've done with them through this point in the season, and I look forward to seeing them compete again.
Now tell me something here. 5 games under your belt is a very small sample size comparatively speaking. Do you see the Hokies making a big impact in the ACC this season?
Looking at it, Chris, I mean, I think they have a shooter's chance, no pun intended, the way, if they could shoot the 3-ball the way they have all season. Again, like you heard Coach Young said, hey, we are who we are. He would love to have that big 6'10", 7-footer, a guy last year like they had Kerry Blackshear Jr. who transferred to Florida. I mean, if they had a guy like that, maybe they probably wouldn't shoot as many threes. But you know what Bill Parcells says? You are what your record says you are who you are. And I tell you one thing. If you look at the ACC as a whole, you're going to have your usual suspects. You're going to have the Virginias, the North Carolinas, the Dukes, the Louisvilles, the Syracuses, the NC States, those type of teams. But I think Virginia could make it to that, you know, not necessarily the top 4 seed line, but, I mean, if you shoot the way they shoot and you play fairly good defense, which they've done, they have an opportunity to make a little run to be, you know, sort of in that upper half of the ACC, in that top 8 range. So I really would look out for them, Chris. I mean, again, shooting, you live by the 3, you die by the 3, and they're going to have another big test coming up after Maui, as the following week after Thanksgiving, they get back into ACC play on Friday, December the 6th. They have a home game against Duke, a team they've had some success with at the crib at Castle Coliseum. So it'll be interesting. The Hokies will get some fun in the sun. Unfortunately, I'm not going to have the opportunity to have fun in the sun, but it'll be fun for the Hokies to get that experience to play in the Maui Invitation.
Well, definitely looks like a fun team to watch this year. And just remember there, Jermaine, the Lord only made a few perfect heads, and the rest he covered up with hair. But we're going to keep our eyes on this Virginia Tech team coming up here. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
And moving on, here was a battle of Boeheims in Syracuse this week as head coach Jim Boeheim's son Jimmy and the Cornell Big Red came to town. WSYR's Darius Joshua was there covering the Orange.
After Syracuse's 89-67 win over Seattle on November 16th, came maybe the most hyped non-conference game of the year, a battle with Cornell and Jimmy Boeheim. Volume 3 of the Battle of the Boeheims may have been the best one yet. Jimmy's game-high 25 points nearly led the Big Red to an upset over the Orange, but instead, SU pulled away, and it's Buddy and Jim Boeheim who retained the bragging rights for another year.
I don't really like coaching against my son, but, you know, we got to do it once a year. We got to get through it. But he played really well, and I'm sure his mother's happy.
I'll take a win any day. He gave me that competitive edge, never let me beat him in whatever we did. Didn't matter the competition, and you know I always wanted to be better than him and try to be the level that he was at, and help me get here. And you know, just being out there sharing that experience with him is great.
It was cool. You know, Jimmy had his best one, his best round tonight. He played really well, and I'm happy for him, but you know we had to come with the dub.
I thought we had a really good chance. Yeah, I mean it would be awesome to come here and leave with a win. But I mean I'm proud of the way we fought for the first 30 minutes. We just kind of got a piece together the full game, I think.
Before the game was announced that sophomore guard Jalen Carey will miss the remainder of the season as he needs thumb surgery. Coach Boeheim said it was an injury that he was dealing with for a while and tried to play through it, but it needed to be fixed. He also said he expects him to get a medical red shirt out of the situation. Next, Syracuse will take on Bucknell for a noon tip to continue the non-conference schedule before heading to Brooklyn for a couple of games at the Barclays Center. Covering Syracuse, I'm Darius Joshua.
Great stuff, Darius. Thank you. Syracuse has one more home game before they head to Brooklyn for the preseason NIT. They'll take on Bucknell Saturday at noon, and then game 1 of the preseason NIT is Wednesday night at 7 against Oklahoma State. And moving on here, Pitt and West Virginia, both in different conferences now, one-time Big East rivals, but there's still a lot of bad blood between these two crews. The Panthers hosted this year's edition of the Backyard Brawl, but it was West Virginia who ran away with the game. The Mountaineers won this thing 68-53 on Friday, but after a weekend of practice and adjustments, licking their wounds and figuring out what happened, Pitt rebounded with a 63-50 win over Monmouth on Monday night. Pitt didn't have long to recover from that one. They're already underway against Arkansas Pine Bluff in the Steel City. Next week, the Panthers head down to the Sunshine State. They'll take on Kansas State in the Fort Myers tip-off. That is Monday at 6. And it was an up-and-down week for Boston College. Belmont dropped 100 points on the Eagles over the weekend, using a 30-7 run in the second half to pull away and beat BC 100-85. And then in a battle of Eagles last night, Boston College just barely squeaked past Eastern Washington, coming away with a 72-68 win. BC forward Nick Popovic scored the 1,000th point of his career in that one. The Eagles stay at home for the next week. They'll square off against DePaul on Saturday at noon, and then it's a Wednesday matinee against St. Louis. That one tips off at 2 o'clock. And Wake Forest is already making changes. Just 4 games into the season, as WGHB's Kevin Conley reports, there's a new intensity at practice after that loss to Charlotte.
There is no doubt that the 2019-2020 basketball season is a critical year for Wake Forest head coach Danny Manning. He's fighting to impress a new boss, fighting to keep a fan base on board, so fighting to keep his job. Kind of crazy to think about all that after just 4 games, but that's the reality facing Manning and the Deacons. Wake Forest lost to Charlotte in overtime to fall to 2-2 on the season. But 4 games doesn't make a season, and that's the message that head coach Danny Manning has for his team. Keep working, and good things can happen.
You go back and you look at the 2 losses, and you look at the things that the mistakes and breakdowns we had, they're all correctable. But it's making sure that we correct those going out into each game. We have to do a better job of rewarding ourselves, too, offensively especially, because we had, 11 opportunities, 2 feet and in that we didn't finish. And you're not going to make every shot. But of those 11, if we finished 3 of them, a little bit different outcome possibly.
Losing to Charlotte proved that Wake can't take any team for granted, and sometimes a loss is not always a bad thing, if that loss serves as the motivation to get better. There was a new intensity at practice this week, according to the players.
First practice we came in yesterday, dudes is coming ready to compete. I think after the loss to Charlotte, I think dudes really wanted to make big changes, and I think we did some good things, and I think people see the light. We see the light as a team, and we just have to make sure we execute stuff. So I think we paid attention to detail in practice, and we really competed on both ends of the floor, making sure that we're pushing each other because we're going to need everybody on the court.
The Deacons will spend the Thanksgiving break in California playing in the Wooden Legacy Classic. Trips like that can be very good, a bonding experience for teams. Covering Wake Forest, I'm Kevin Conley.
And before that tournament gets underway, the Deacons have a big matchup against Davidson tomorrow night at 7:30 at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte. And then he said, well, they'll head to Anaheim to open up that Wooden Legacy tournament with Charleston on Thanksgiving Day. That one is at 4:30. No 2 bones about it. Notre Dame's on a roll. They've won 4 straight since they've lost an opening night matchup at UNC. But as WTTV's Dave Griffiths reports, things are about to get a lot tougher for the Irish.
4 wins in a row, all by double digits, in fact, as a slightly shorthanded Notre Dame squad improved to 4-1 Monday night, taking down Presbyterian. The Irish were without preseason All-ACC first-teamer John Mooney. He came to the arena even dressed for pregame, but a stomach virus proved too much to play through, so he sat out. But no worries for Mike Brey's squad. The front court was in good hands as sophomore Nate Liszewski and senior Juwan Durham teamed up for 26 points, 21 rebounds, and 4 blocked shots. Brey expects Mooney to be back in time for tonight's game against Toledo. And hearing Coach talk about the Rockets, the Irish will need to be at full strength.
They're really well coached. They're old. They know who they are. They shoot it. They made 14 threes at Marshall. I just told our guys, they can win the Mid-American Conference. And so, they're coming in here thinking they're a big win for us if we can get it, because that's going to be a resume win.
Brey's not blowing smoke. The Irish and Rockets have a few common opponents already this season. I'll take Marshall as an example. Notre Dame beat them by 10 at home. Toledo spanked them by 26 on the road. Tip-off set for 8:30 tonight. Covering Notre Dame, I'm Dave Griffiths.
All right, thanks a lot, Dave. And after tonight's game against Toledo, the Fighting Irish take on Farley Dickinson on Tuesday at 7 before a long Thanksgiving break. Meanwhile, the Miami Hurricanes are not waiting until next week for an early season tournament. They're in South Carolina for the Charleston Classic, and they got things started with an 11:30 tip-off this morning and edged out Missouri State 74-70. Dejan Vasilevich led the way for the Hurricanes, scoring 25 points on 9 of 13 shooting. Cameron McGusty added 19 points of his own. Today's win puts the U into the next round of the tournament. It's going to be a big one tomorrow. Hurricanes square off against Florida. That one gets started at noon. And Clemson back on the floor at Little John Coliseum as they host Alabama A&M. WSPA's Pete Yannity is covering the Tigers, who are coming off a huge win at home over Detroit Mercy. Pete?
The Tigers had a full week off before playing again on Sunday against Detroit Mercy, and Clemson knocked off the Titans out of the Horizon League 87-65, shooting 48% from the field and 33% from long range. Now, a big story in the ball game was the contribution of Hunter Tyson, the sophomore from just outside of Charlotte. A career-high 20 points. He made 5 threes, and he certainly would like to be in the mix when it comes to those that Brad Brownell can turn to for scoring.
I never lost confidence in myself, even through my shooting struggles. Like, I always knew what I could do. I always knew I put the time in, so I knew what a day like this was due.
Shoots the ball really well, good offensive confidence. We just got to kind of find ways to get him better rhythm. He made a couple mistakes defensively in the game, and I've been on him about that. He's got to continue to fight to do a little bit better there, and as he does, his minutes will grow. But I'm confident that he's gonna play well for us this year.
That win over UDM put Clemson at 3-1 on the season, with another game on Thursday against Alabama A&M, and then on the road for the first time in the 2019 and 20 campaign to a tournament in Las Vegas. Covering the Tigers, I'm Pete Yannity.
Thanks a lot, Pete. Tigers are underway against Alabama A&M. That one just got started a few minutes ago. After that, Clemson heads to Las Vegas. They'll take on TCU in the MGM Resort's main event. That's Tuesday at 10:30. A little closer to home here, NC State. They've won 4 in a row after that opening night overtime loss to Georgia Tech. Covering the Wolfpack's latest win over Alcorn State, it's WNCN's Todd Gibson. Todd?
Make it 4 straight wins for NC State. The Pack appears to be hitting its stride after 2 heritage wins here at historic Reynolds Coliseum. One of the reasons the Pack is playing so well is Markel Johnson. 16 points, 8 assists tonight. When Johnson plays like he did tonight, the Pack is tough to beat.
I think he's played well when he's not scoring the ball. He's done different stuff. He's got people involved, but he's passing the ball at a high level. I can't get him to go back. I don't want him to be sophomore Markel where he thinks he's got to lead the league in assists. On this particular team, we need him to have a balance of scoring and passing the basketball.
And when he's on a roll and playing good, it just makes it harder for the opponent. It makes it easier for everybody else because they have to worry about so many more people. So it helps.
The Pack is back in action Saturday hosting Little Rock, and then you have 2 tough games, one against Memphis, then the ACC Big Ten Challenge against Wisconsin. Then the schedule gets a little bit quirky. They jump back into ACC play facing Wake Forest, and then they have 5 straight non-conference games. Covering the Wolfpack, I'm Todd Gibson.
Good stuff, Todd. Thanks a lot. NC State squares off with Little Rock, like you said, Saturday at 1. Then the Wolfpack going to head to the Big Alpha, the Barclays Center Classic, their first game there against 16th-ranked Memphis on Thanksgiving. That's at 4 in the afternoon. All right, we've seen the highs, we've seen the lows, but let's dig into the numbers here. And our numbers guy is none other than Jason Logan from Covers.com. Jason, thanks for being here with us again. Man, I'm just going to go right to it. The number 6 Cavaliers got a scare from Vermont earlier this week. You talk about escaping with a 61-55 win. The Cavs now face the UMass Minutemen. What does Virginia really have to worry about here with this squad? Because, man, that last game, I wasn't feeling so good on it, man.
Much like Vermont, UMass can shoot the ball really well from distance, 43% from beyond the arc this season, 16th in the country. They're averaging just over 11 three-pointers per game in their last 3 games. Virginia has been terribly inconsistent from distance, especially when you measure that to the results of last season. So what Virginia really needs to concentrate on here is getting their heels above the three-point line, getting a hand up on those shooters. They're number 1 in the country in terms of field goal percentage against, but just 54th in defending the three-pointer, and they've allowed their last 2 opponents to shoot 33% from beyond the arc. So they really can't afford to let this game turn into a shootout.
Another one of those tip-off classics here. We got Clemson way out west against TCU in Las Vegas. Now, I don't know about you when you go to Vegas, but I'm not in any kind of shape to do anything productive there. But I know Clemson's different now. But, they've had a pretty good run after losing that opening game. But we're talking about another one of these tip-off classics where anything can happen. What do they have to do to be successful out there?
Yeah, as you mentioned, they got to avoid that Vegas flu, which tends to sneak up on teams when they pull in the Sin City. But on the court here, they've been finding their touch and shooting. They're averaging 9.3 three-point buckets made per game, and actually over their last 3 games, that's ticked up to 10.3 three-pointers made. Now, Jamie Dixon, the TCU head coach, he knows the ACC very well during his time at Pitt. And this game has the potential to turn into a very high-scoring, entertaining game. TCU second in the country in three-pointers made per game, 12.5. They're actually picking up 46% of their offense from beyond the arc. So I think whoever wins the long-range war in this game is going to win it all.
Another one of those tip-off classics. It's not quite the Vegas flu, but we're talking about Virginia Tech heading way out west to Hawaii. Now, I've been there. I didn't want to come back. And these guys out there, they're going to be taking on Michigan State. Explain to me and the people watching here why we should put our faith in the Hokies to come away with a W when they're playing in one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
Yeah, well, Virginia Tech has been one of the better bets in basketball right out of the blocks here. 4-1 ATS. That includes that ACC opening win over Clemson. And we've talked a lot about three-point shooting today, but that's really what's fueling this Hokies offense. The Hokies coming off a 21 for 37 night from beyond the arc. They hit 21 three-pointers in that win over Delaware State. And they've hit at least 9 three-pointers in each of their 5 games this season. Now, Michigan State, a huge step up in competition. However, the Spartans have lost a lot of talent from beyond the arc. From last year's team, they're shooting just 29.5% from three-point range. And Virginia Tech coach Mike Young, he has a taste for upsets. This guy is not intimidated by the Blue Bloods. He knocked off UNC back in 2017 as the head coach of Warford. So might be some trouble in paradise for Michigan State.
I forgot about that. I forgot about them knocking off UNC. Jason Logan, our guy, crunching the numbers and getting us up to speed from Covers.com. Always a pleasure. All right, normally this is when I'd ask you to join us next week for another chase for the championship, but next Thursday is Thanksgiving. So we're all going to be at home. I'll be at my place with family and friends eating a lot of ham and greens, but we're going to be back the following week with an extra show to make up for it. We're going to be focused on that ACC Big Ten Challenge and 2 shows that week, one on Wednesday, December the 4th, and then on Thursday, normal time, December the 5th. So until then, enjoy your holiday and be sure to watch plenty of basketball. We'll see you next time.